virtually for this Blockchain Netherlands meetup. Now, I don't know if you have seen the cryptocurrency prices rising today again, but well, last week I was at the doctor, and before he gave me medical advice, he actually asked me if he should buy Cardano. I have friends who don't even know how a computer works, but even asking me if they should buy Tezos. It's one big crazy hype again. We see crazy, but also great developments with respect to NFTs, metaverse, DeFi, and so forth, but also the shadow sides of the industry, of the crypto industry. Pump and dump schemes. We see wash trading. We see a lot of things going wrong on a daily basis. Fortunately, regulators all over the world are currently working on frameworks to really regulate the industry, regulate the cryptocurrency industry. Well, I'm always proud of the European Union always taking the first steps when it comes to, for example, privacy regulations. But also now they're taking the first steps when it comes to the regulations for the cryptocurrency. And well, we're really keen on learning what is actually going on with the MiCA regulation. What is it about? What will be the impacts of it? When will it actually will be introduced in the European Union? And for this, we're really excited to have, I think, one of the thought leaders when it comes to law and blockchain, Willem-Jan Smits, WatsonLaw. Willem-Jan has been member of our community since day one. You're, well, I think everybody who has a challenge when it comes to blockchain or cryptocurrency and law always makes the call to Den Bosch. So we're really excited to have Willem-Jan tonight with us speaking about MiCA, the implementations, what we can expect. And so we're going to listen tonight first to Willem-Jan. He will give a keynote. After this, we will have a panel. So a panel with two Blockchain Netherlands members who will also share their thoughts, what they think, what will be the implication. Sorry, long day of meetings. What will be the implications for their companies? So we're also really looking forward to that. Questions? Well, from the physical audience, easy. Just please raise your hand. Questions, remarks, anything like that. But for the virtual audience, we are streaming this event in Microsoft Teams. So if you have a question, remark, anything like that, please leave a message in the chat function, and it will end up here in the studio. And I'm happy to ask and discuss this with Willem-Jan and, of course, the panel. But for now, Willem-Jan, stage is yours.
Thank you, Jan. We've said all this. Yes, welcome all, and thank you. Today here, my name is Willem-Jan Smits. I'm lawyer and co-founder of WatsonLaw, and we, on a daily basis, help people with complying with regulations. I'm going to talk to you today about the MiCA regulations, markets in crypto asset regulation, and what it does, what it will mean for your company, for your business. And to kick off with this, it will change everything. MiCA is the single most piece of legislation, important piece of legislation that the crypto industry will see in this decade, because it will completely regulate the industry. So, let's talk about what the situation is now, because the regulators, they tumble over each other to say that there is no regulation, that crypto is an unregulated market, and that there is currently no regulation in place. And of course, okay, thank you. There is no legislation in place, but of course there is. We all know AMLD5. It has been implemented in the Netherlands, and currently 25 companies are registered by DNB and are under supervision of DNB in the Netherlands. Furthermore, we've all seen the Binance case and what happened there, and that there is regulation in place for the crypto market. So if your token or if the things that you are doing are traditional financial instruments, then you are actually regulated under the traditional framework. And that's the big mistake that Binance made, is that they overplayed their hand and issued financial instruments on their platform, and they're seeing heavy scrutiny from regulators all over the world now. And that's also one of the reasons why DNB issued a warning towards them. Not only because of the AML regulation, but just because there is regulation for the crypto space. So what is it going to mean for companies in the Netherlands? Like I said, currently 25 are regulated, and I believe that 90% of all crypto companies will be regulated one way or the other under MiCA. So let's kick it off. What was the motivation for the EU to issue MiCA and come up with this new piece of legislation? Well, the first and the official reason was that it's part of the digital finance package. So a means for the EU to innovate finance and to stay leader on that front. And with this come 4 objectives, and it is to provide the sector with legal clarity, which is a good thing, of course, and with unified rules, meaning that everywhere in the EU the rules are the same when it comes to crypto. And furthermore, to replace the existing frameworks that are in a couple of member states. For instance, Malta has its own blockchain law. Estonia has its own blockchain law. And this will be replaced by one framework, which is MiCA, throughout the EU. And the last one, and that is, in my opinion, by far the biggest one, and it's the reason why we are talking about MiCA right now, and it was Facebook with other large companies issuing the Libra, or announcing the Libra, because it's not there yet, of course, currently called DM token. So to regulate stable coins, because that is exactly what the EU sees as an important issue and an important reason why this industry should be regulated. So, MiCA as a regulation, what does it mean? In the EU we have 2 types of legislative instruments. The first one is the regulation, which is MiCA, and the other one is a directive. And a regulation that works directly in each member state, which means that once MiCA is in place, it will regulate every company in the EU. Versus a directive, which we all know from AMLD5, the AML directive, that has to be implemented in each member state, which means that you have 27 more or less the same regimes, but slightly different interpretations per member state. And people that are involved with crypto brokers currently know that it is a pain in the ass to register in each country and to work with 27 different regimes. So the good news is that MiCA will be a regulation and will be the same in every member state, and truly opening the EU market for crypto parties. And then, of course, there is the current traditional legislation for financial instruments, and MiCA will be on top of that, or apart from that, I should say. For instance, bonds, shares, derivatives, they are currently regulated by the prospectus regulation, by the MiFID directive, and MiCA will be next to that. So substantially it will be the same, but it is a different piece of legislation. And to who will it apply? It will apply, like I said, to everyone in the EU providing crypto services or issuing tokens, but it will also apply to everyone who is aiming actively at the EU market. And this means that if you are a Japanese company or if you are a US company and you want to target the EU market, you have to comply with MiCA. So it won't only regulate European countries, but as well foreign, outside of EU companies. So what's in general headlines the subject of MiCA? What is the contents of it? It will provide transparency and disclosure for obligations for parties that want to issue tokens. Furthermore, so-called crypto asset service providers, CASPs, have to be authorized. They have to obtain a license. Furthermore, there are compliance regulations for these CASPs, and there will be consumer protection rules on issuing, trading, exchanging, and custody of crypto assets. And an important pillar of the regulation is prevention of market abuse. Like Jan just said in the introduction, wash trading, pump and dump schemes, there will be extra focus on that, on preventing those. Okay, then the MiCA concepts. What will fall under this regime? What is a crypto asset, and what different versions or kind of crypto assets will be there? First of all, we have to say that a crypto asset cannot be a financial instrument. So what does this mean? If a token, for instance, is the same as a share, or really looks like a share, so a security token, what we would like to call it, then it isn't a crypto asset under MiCA, and MiCA isn't applicable to that. This means that security tokens will stay regulated under the regimes that are already there for traditional stocks and bonds and derivatives. So that won't change, and it won't matter that this this share is represented by a token. First of all, MiCA has the aim to catch all other crypto assets. So it doesn't matter whether it's utility token or whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum, it's a catch-all. And there are 3 different or 4 different categories of crypto assets. The first one is the utility token, which we probably all know, and most token issuers structure their token in such a way that it is a utility token, so it's not a security token. Utility token can be seen as a means of obtaining a service or entering a network. Then there are 2 types of stablecoins, and the first stablecoin is a coin that references towards a basket of assets. Could either be physical gold or a batch of fiat currency, but it's always a basket of the various types of assets. It's called asset referenced token. And there is the other stablecoin that references its value towards fiat currency, for instance, euro or US dollar. During this presentation, I will focus on the traditional crypto assets, so to say, so Bitcoin and Ethereum, as well as utility tokens, because I believe that that's what will be the most of your business, whereas stablecoins are out of scope for today. It's a topic of its own, and that's quite tough regulation will be in place for that. So who are subject to MiCA? First of all, it's the issuers of tokens, and there are 2 types, like I said, 2 types of issuers of tokens. That's first of all the catch-all category, as well as the utility, and there's the stablecoin issuers. And the catch-all and utility token issuers are, the regime will be quite light, whereas for stablecoins the regime will be quite tough. And there's the 3rd category of subjects, and that is the crypto asset service providers. So that's basically everyone who touches crypto on a basis, so that can be a trading platform, or someone who's providing advice, or it's someone who exchanges. I'll go into that in a bit deeper. And on this slide I've put out every subject that there is, from light to strong in terms of regulation. So, to start with the issuance and listing of crypto assets. what will happen when MiCA is in place will be the following: that everyone issues a token, and again I'm talking about the control category here and the utility token. Everyone who wishes to issue a token should be incorporated in one way or another. Doesn't necessarily have to be in the EU, but there should be a legal entity issuing these tokens. This also goes for DEXs and DAOs. So if a DAO wants to issue a token and aim this token or promote this token in the EU, then this DAO should be incorporated in a legal entity anywhere in the world. And if a DEX wants to list crypto assets or will list tokens, then it has to be a legal entity as well. Furthermore, anyone who has the aim of issuing a token has to draw up a white paper. Obviously, that's common practice now, but it will be a regulated type of white paper. So there is regulation on what it should look like, what risk warnings that should be in there, and what the contents of this white paper is. One could see it as a prospectus light. It's definitely not as tough as a prospectus under the prospectus regulation, but it is a regulated document. This has to be drawn up, it has to be published on the website of the issuer, and it has to be registered with the local supervisor. In our case, that's AFM. This goes if an issuer wants to offer the tokens to less than 150 retail investors per member state, and if it wants to raise more than $1 million, €1 million per 12 months. There are some exceptions there. No white paper has to be drawn up if the tokens are offered for free. For mining, also not required. And there's an interesting thing, and that's for NFTs. There's an exemption for NFTs as well. When the draft of MiCA was drawn up, this NFT hype wasn't there yet, so this might change due to what we are seeing in the current markets now. What is important to say about the white paper is that it doesn't have to be approved by the regulator. It has to be sent up front. It doesn't have to be approved, but on the basis of the content of the white paper, the regulator, so AFM, can prohibit the issuance and the promotion. And I expect that in practice, this will mean that AFM is going, not formally, but has an informal approval right. Furthermore, if you want to issue a token or if you want to list your token on a regulated EU exchange, then you have to obtain a legal opinion about the qualification of this token, because the token cannot be a financial instrument. So it cannot be a share in the company or a derivative. Another thing that's probably quite impactful is that the investor has a 14-day right of withdrawal, which can be compared with the right of withdrawal or the rights to annul an online buy. And the most important thing that is going to change under MiCA is that an issuer of a token or a company that wants to list its token on a regulated exchange, that this company and its management board will be liable for damages if there is a misleading white paper. So if the white paper isn't complete or if the information in the white paper is misleading, then the board of directors as well as the company can be held liable. What we currently in those contracts see is that all liability is excluded, but under MiCA, when MiCA exists there, those contractual clauses will be void. Thanks, Camille. was thinking about the Dutch verb, but it's void indeed. And the good thing what comes from this is that when you do all this, you can promote your token throughout the EU. So you only have to register it in the Netherlands, but then it can be promoted throughout the EU under this same framework. And that's a big leap forward from where we're standing now. So that was the issuance and the admission of tokens. And now the second important category under MiCA is the crypto asset service providers, the CASPs. And on the screen you see the 8 services that there are under MiCA and that will be regulated under MiCA. Custody is the first one, and I think it's also the most important one. Currently, obviously, custody is regulated under AML D5. One has to register with DNB, but there is no conduct supervision, which means that the supervision currently only sees at the AML prevention and not on the entire business. That will come under MiCA. Furthermore, trading platforms will be regulated, and there's also crypto versus crypto. So not only crypto versus fiat, but also crypto. And the same goes for both exchanges. So exchange service between crypto and exchange service between crypto and fiat will be regulated. The difference between the trading platform and an exchange, I can imagine that there's a bit of doubt there. The difference between those two is that an exchange buys and sells the crypto to you, whereas a trading platform provides basically a means of 2 investors to trade with each other. So you're not trading with the exchange there. Then execution of order, reception and transmission of orders, speaks for itself, I believe, and then placing, that's basically the primary market. So if you as a service help people that issue tokens to sell them and place them with investors, then you are placing those things. Currently that's not regulated, but will be regulated under MiCA. And then the last one is investment advice. If you advise on buying or selling crypto, that will be regulated and you will need a license for that. If we look at this list, then we see that it's highly comparable with the list of companies that are currently regulated under MiFID if they are doing, if they are providing services for financial instruments. But one category or 2 categories are not regulated here under MiCA and that really step out. And that's asset management, so what we call in Dutch vermogensbeheer. That is, if you are providing vermogensbeheer asset management for shares or for bonds, mainly shares, that is a licensable event, but under MiCA it won't be licensable. So that's, I don't know whether it's a mistake but it's a gap that we're seeing. And the second one is dealing on own account. That's also not licensable under MiCA, and what you can see under that, it is market making. So professional market makers under the first version of MiCA won't be regulated. So what's this regulation about? First of all, CASPs have to obtain authorization. So this means they have to obtain a license from in the Netherlands AFM. And before they can do that, they have to set up shop. So they have to incorporate a legal entity in the in the EU. It is not, you are not allowed to provide the services on the list I just shown in the EU without a legal entity here and without a license. So what's further to say for the license is that the board of directors of an authorized company have to be assessed by the regulator, which means that the regulator will look into the past of this person, whether there are financial antecedents, and whether this person is fit for the job, so has enough experience and knowledge to properly provide guidance to this company and direct the company. That's quite impactful because it means that a company should have experienced directors. Furthermore, if such a company will be acquired by another company, partial of or in full, then it has to gain approval from the regulator. So that's what we're seeing for other companies now as well, and that will be in place in MiCA. Then the large advantage that this regulation will bring, again, is an EU passport. That what is currently highly missing under the AML directive will be there under MiCA. So this means that if you obtain a license in the Netherlands, then you will be allowed to provide your services throughout the EU without obtaining a license in any other member state. That's a really large advantage. What else is needed for you to set up a company under MiCA? There is an obligation of capital requirements, which basically means that you have to have tier 1 capital. What's this? Most of the time it's share capital. There are 3 different classes depending on how risky in terms of from a client perspective the business is. So we have the first class is 50k, second class custody. When you're actually holding assets for your clients, then it's substantially higher. It's 125,000 euros, and the most large ones are the trading platforms and the exchanges. They have to have quite some capital to start with, and they have to maintain this capital. So they cannot. It's not like we knew under the BV that you could issue it once and then get it out again. Now it has to be in place there as long as you are regulated and as long as you are using this license. Then what are the obligations that will these CASPs have to get in place? First of all, they have to put their client first. And what does it mean? This means that they have to provide them with information on the service, and that this information has to be correct, complete, and not misleading. That especially goes for the risks that are involved with the service, as well as with costs. So there cannot be any hidden costs for these services. Furthermore, this company has to hire skilled personnel and has to put in place a procedure to make sure that this personnel keeps this knowledge. Furthermore, there has to be a risk and compliance program, so there has to be people that have experience and knowledge with risk management, and also a dedicated compliance officer. And an important category for those companies handling companies' funds is that these funds have to be divided from the funds of the company. And this goes both for fiat that a company might be holding, as well as for crypto assets that a company might be holding for its clients. And this sounds more easy than it is, because only putting those funds on another bank account doesn't suffice. Because if these companies go bankrupt, then no matter on what bank account these funds are, they will fall into the bankruptcy, and it won't provide any protection to the clients. So what is expected here is that there is a separate legal entity holding the funds, and what we in the Netherlands are used to known as using a trust foundation. So in Dutch, Stichting Beheer Derde Geld, which holds the funds. And such a company has to put in place policies on sound operational management and ethical business operations, which includes, for instance, complaint handling procedures, conflict of interest policies, and a policy on outsourcing. So if it's a bit broader than that, but those are some examples for that. Then there are major specific obligations as well for CASPs. So depending on the category that they are in. For instance, custody. I've named them on the sheet. I'm not going to rule them all, but we can pick out some of them, because, for instance, what is an important one for custody is that the company is liable for any loss of funds. And we have seen obviously a lot of these things going on in the past, and there's a tendency for companies of excluding any liability, and once MiCA is in place, that's not possible anymore. Trading platforms, there are important rules for trading platforms as well. One of those that they have to adopt listing rules, which basically is a rule that they have to abide to when they are listing tokens on their platform. So they have to make a policy of saying this we are going to do, that we're not going to do. And there's some regulation there as well. So privacy coins aren't allowed. They cannot be listed on EU trading platforms anymore. And there has to be a quality assessment made by the trading platforms, which means they have to look into every asset that they want to list and make a risk assessment of that particular asset. Look if it's within their risk appetite or not. And also there they have to assess the white paper that the company has published and review if it's complete and if it's fair, and if they complied with the obligation to register it with the authorities. Last but not least, they have to provide with T0 settling, which means that a trade has to be settled the same day on DLT level. I think that's the most for investment advice. That's quite an important one as well. Is that if you are providing investment to your clients, you are obliged to provide them with a knowledge test and with an experience test, and make sure that the advice that you provide actually is sufficient and is tailored to this specific client. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, there it is. Yeah, so the fourth pillar I mentioned is the market abuse pillar, and that's one that's really in the view of regulators now. I'm seeing it with more professional parties that are offering trading platforms or brokerage service. They are really active already at combating this market abuse, and we're looking at pump and dump schemes there, wash trading, preventing those. But it will step up a little bit, or quite a bit, I can say. So market abuse is about the obligation also to provide inside the obligation to publish insider information. So if you as a company have information that can significantly change the price of your token or the price of your company itself, then you have to publish this information publicly on your website. So for instance, if you are looking to expand your company by buying another one, or if you are changing the things that you are doing, so enter into new markets or issuing a new token or those kind of things, then you have to publish this to the public, so that it's not insider information anymore. And there is an important prohibition on this insider information, as the prohibition to use this insider information in dealing. So if you know, if you are an insider to a company, then you cannot use this information in your own advantage in trading. And this means that companies that will be regulated under MiCA have to set up an insider list and put on this list everyone who has access to insider information. It is already really common with companies that are listed on a stock exchange, but it will come for every company that has a token listed on an EU regulated exchange. And also you are not allowed to tip anyone off. So this means that you cannot pass on insider information to anyone else and have that person use this insider information in his own or your advantage. And the last one, and it's an important one as well, is that there will be a prohibition on market manipulation. So this means that pump and dump schemes are they are not allowed now, but they will be more strictly regulated under MiCA. And the way that this will happen is on the previous sheet you will see, or you can see if you look it back, that there is pre and post order trading transparency for trading platforms. This means that trading platforms have to register all the trades and have to look for strange patterns there. If they see a pump and dump scheme, then they have to report this with the authorities, so the authorities can actively prevent these schemes and step up against them. So that's an important one for that. So that's on the last pillar of MiCA. Then we go to oh no, we're not going to that. We're going to answer the question that we posed before. What does MiCA mean for your business? And MiCA will, in my view, lead to and provide more legal clarity and more of a level playing field throughout the EU, which means that for everyone the same rules will apply. And it will put your company under prudential and conduct supervision. Prudential means that you have to have the capital that I described, and conduct supervision means that they will look into the behavior of your company and that it has to be in line with the regulation. But as a gain from that, it will open the entire EU market for you. You will be able to have clients and offer your token and get listed on exchanges throughout the EU. And it will introduce new players to the market. So MiCA will definitely lead to family offices feeling comfortable of investing in crypto assets. It will lead to banks feeling comfortable to buy custody companies or start custody companies for crypto assets. It will lead to stock exchanges entering this market. So it will change everything. And MiCA will also make your business a better acquisition target. We are currently seeing a lot of interest from outside the EU for acquisitions here, but I hear those large players say, okay, we are not ready yet because there's not a level playing field and we have to go to all these 27 member states. But when MiCA is there, it will change and your company will be a much more attractive acquisition target. And last of all, MiCA will be followed by MiCA 2, because what we see now is just the tip of the iceberg of regulation if you compare it to regulation on financial instruments. And we have to prepare ourselves for getting MiCA done, and then regulators will step up the pace and we have to step up the pace as well. Thank you.
Whew,
So,
tough stuff. Still happy that I chose finance in the university. It's I have so many questions, and I saw so many questions flowing by. Actually, also in the chat. But let me start first, of course, with our physical audience. You came all the way here to Eindhoven, so please prepare your questions. I have to say we had a little crazy start because we have several people that should be here helping us out, but are stuck in a insane traffic already since 5 o'clock. So we started a little bit later. We started with some technical things, but we're really excited that everything is up. We're also really thankful that we can host this event today in Eindhoven, the smartest region of the world, at Twice. And we're really, really excited to be here today. We're going to do lots of more things with Twice concerning blockchain in the upcoming months. But we're really excited also not to just host events in Amsterdam, but we're really planning to do this more also in local communities, for example here today in Eindhoven. First question, because there were a few questions about the slides and the things that you were saying, is that there will be a recording. There will be a recording of this event, and we will place it at our public YouTube channel. So you can watch everything back. And we will, of course, also share all the details of Willem-Jan. So you can send him an email if you have any questions from your company.
It's on the last slide.
It's on the last slide. We will share all the information. Now, let me start. Are there any questions from the physical audience already? Please.
Well, all right, let me start with the high level one. Actually, what are the timelines of MiCA?
Yeah, so let me repeat the question for the people at home. The question is, what are the timelines? So I guess the implementation timeline.
Yeah, the timeline is that there is a draft now. It's currently under EU law process. It is expected anywhere between 2022 and 2024.
So since you mentioned it is draft, so there is still like room for, let's say, amendments.
Revisions and that kind of stuff.
There is room for that, yes, that's correct. But keep in mind that this is a regulation, like I said, so it won't have to be implemented afterwards. So once it's there, it's there.
But that's a 4-year timeline. So just like, when will this be implemented? When do you think? Is it like 2 years? Is it 5 years? What's?
I think it will be there shortly after 2022.
Okay, sure. Okay, so next year will be revision phase and implementation. Okay, that's faster than I would expect from the EU, like regulation-wise.
Yeah.
Okay, 1 more year. Interesting. Okay, any more questions? Please.
Well, there were some things that were now become obligated, but given that censorship resistance is one of blockchain's main selling points, how would enforcement on those obligations and requirements on people actually look like?
Okay, so the question for the people at home is like, if we look to the nature of blockchain, it's of course censorship resistance and so forth. So when we look to the enforcement of the law, how will this actually work out? So yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Blockchain itself isn't regulated. The people using it will be regulated. So in my view, the technology itself is a basement layer that remains the same, but the people using it, they will be regulated and they will have the responsibility to comply with the rules, which also means, for instance, trading platforms are not allowed to list all the crypto assets that are out there. Does that answer your question?
Partly. Because if someone just goes rogue and starts a DEX without without complying at all, what prevents someone else to just use that DEX then? Or with that, because I don't think that's prohibited.
Okay, that's the question was, well, what will happen if someone just started up DEX? That's the first question. The second one is, what will happen if someone uses that DEX? That really depends on how you do it. A truly DEX can be out there. So if someone just uses and publishes open source software that is used by people, that, in my opinion, cannot be prohibited, and under MiCA it won't be prohibited. But as soon as there is a team behind it that, you know, promotes it, etc., then there has to be a legal entity, and if this team doesn't get this legal entity and doesn't obtain a license, then the regulator can go after them.
Okay, but that's of course the formal story. But if we look, for example, to it's incredible to see how fast DEXs like Uniswap, PancakeSwap, etc. Have gained like market cap, right? They're now even larger as like the centralized exchanges. And I guess they just don't care. I don't see, I'm really curious, like from a regulatory perspective, do you see DEXs, for example, actually moving to the EU or having an office in the EU? If we now already see most of them going to the British Virgin Islands, for example, Shapeshift actually transforming into a DEX to prevent all the regulatory stuff. Do you see this happening?
Because yeah, definitely. Because I think that's a process of many years. But what we saw happening with Binance, that would happen to those parties as well. Binance was the rogue party, of course, that just did what they did until they entered this financial market derivative stuff,
Yeah.
and then regulators stepped up. And they cannot only step up towards the team, but they can also use the powers to block basically the channels that such a project uses. For instance, the traditional banking, PSPs, etc. And that's what Binance sees now. And if you look at the American situation that you describe, the SEC has those platforms in their crosshairs. Not really very detailed knowledge of the American market, but what we see there is that Gary Gensler, the SEC, he already warned those parties, comply now or we will shut you down. And that I believe that's going to happen.
Yeah, I believe them as well, especially the US. Now, there's tons of questions also from the virtual audience. Many thanks for your questions as well. How is this going to work with a DAO? You know, just a string of codes. Like, you know, should they have an entity?
Very good question. Yeah. The same for DAO goes as for DEX. As soon as it's, as long as it's just code and it is open source and it's put out there by someone and used by people, then there is no aiming at markets. There is no centralized point. But as soon as it's decentralized in name only, then regulators will, in my view, step up, and then there will be the obligation to use a legal entity. And it can be decentralized still in terms of people using it, in terms of governance, but there has to be a centralized legal entity under MiCA. Yeah, but under MiCA, of course, because if they still are accessible, you know, in the global sphere, like, you know, will this ever happen? So I can see that the regulation is there and that it will work for the centralized parties, but I'm really curious if this will actually stimulate decentralized parties actually to register, or if they just look at the regulation and think like, yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah, that's something we have to wait, but I believe that if you, for instance, also look at the American situation where in one of the states there is legislation in place for DAOs who can set up shop there and have a tailored legal entity for such a thing. That may come here as well. But I believe that in terms that in time that will come under regulation as well. No, and I totally agree with you on the fact that with this regulation we see all the bigger institutions, family offices actually entering the scene. So like most of these organizations will comply because they also want all the big money flowing in. So I can also see from that perspective that people or organizations will actually comply. So let me check if there's more questions flowing in from the virtual audience. Curious if there are people here from the physical audience with some remaining questions, please. Can you come a little bit here? Yeah, many thanks.
I was curious about, are there any regulations being talked about in the lending sphere? We've seen a lot of options coming in, not only in DeFi, but also centralized organizations that are offering lending products. We've seen that in the US there's not that much clarity there. Is there more clarity here in Europe?
The question is about lending, if there will also be regulation about, for lending, for example. I think there's now a case with Coinbase as well. Coinbase actually will make some remarks to the SEC, like, because they said like, hey, we offer this product, but it's illegal according to you, but I don't know if you have more intel on that.
No, not on that specific case. No. What lending product are you talking about exactly?
These, for example, liquidity provision or all these yield farming that allow you to generate interest on crypto, like on Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc., or even also with stable coins.
Now, there won't be any regulation on the lending itself, but there will be, it will be a crypto asset service provider, whilst it's almost always provides either custody or any form of exchange service. So under that, it will be a CASP.
All right, please.
Given the state of technology and how things progress in a year or even in the next 3 months,
tokens, literally in every week. What's the strategy for lawmakers to really cope up with the technology? Like they need to be on pace or on par with them. So, what's the strategy for that? Because by the time you come with MiCA 1, 2, 3, 4, we are 10 years ahead. So, how do you think of coping up with the tech?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. The question is how does the regulation will keep up with the tech? And the honest question to that is it won't. Like we see with all regulation always lags behind, and this won't be any difference. So it won't keep up.
There's a lot of research about this pacing problem, that there's always this gap, and governments, they also indicate that they will never actually, be on the forefront. It's impossible. So now I see the questions from the virtual audience. I see questions about stake pools, about stable coins, and so forth. I will bring them to the panel, but we're now slowly entering the panel because we also have, it's our next program item. So Willem-Jan, can I invite you to have a seat over here? And I think we have more people actually entering. I'll wait a few seconds. Egbert, is Egbert with us? Egbert.
Yes, I am. I am.
Great to see you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Christian? Can you also join us? Microphone. Wonderful. Now, while we are setting up the panel, because it will be a mix, also a hybrid panel, people implementing them. We have people here in the audience as well. So it will be a hybrid panel. But while we are setting up, let me shortly introduce the panelists. Of course, Willem-Jan, well, you've heard him already. Joining us from a virtual perspective is Egbert Krop. Egbert is CFO of Icoinic. Yeah, and Icoinic is one of the most iconic companies I know when it comes to cryptocurrency. I know you guys already for since 2015 when you started at the Euronext, at the Amsterdam Stock Exchange. I think, you're doing an insanely job with all your activities and promotion and so forth. So I'm really curious what is next for Icoinic. Egbert, maybe you can give a short introduction. What's going on with Icoinic? What is next? I heard you launched a new fund. You're busy with expanding the team, expanding actually quite rapid. Oh, there's a kid actually. Yeah, Egbert. I see that you were paying attention.
We're
yeah.
growing a lot. I just asked my kids to shut up, actually.
All right. That's